Hi guys, my name is Vardhan, and on behalf of Edureka, I welcome you all to this webinar on Selenium testing. Well, I'm aware of the fact that a couple of people over here in the session are new to Selenium, and a lot of you people are still wondering whether it is the right choice to take up a career in the testing domain, and in particular whether to take up Selenium as the testing tool, right? So don't worry, we will discuss about the very same topic, and I will also tell you in this session why testing with Selenium is the best career choice for you. Okay, so without wasting much time, let me show you the agenda. So these will be the topics I will be covering. I will first start off with the need for testing, and after that I will talk about different testing types and the different software applications which can be tested. Okay, and then I'll talk about the relevance of Selenium as an automation testing tool in the domain in today's world. And finally, I will give you a brief introduction to Selenium and I'll get you started with this domain. Okay, these are the things that you will be learning. And if there are any doubts that you people have or any queries in this during the session, please put them in the chat box. And please acknowledge if I can start the session right now. Mahesh, Atul, Akash, can we start? Okay, all right, we're good to go. So first of all, what is the need for software testing, right? So a lot of you people might know why should we test software, okay, but get these 6 points clear in your head. These are the main reasons why we actually test software. Be it software or any product, you have to make sure that it's of high quality, correct? It's not going to cause any sorts of problems later. You have to make sure that it is the best notch, because once it's released to your customers, then they will experience the product and then they will start giving feedback, and you don't want a negative feedback from them, right? You want to provide the best quality if you want your product to be the best product in the market. Software is also similar. It's as good as any product, right? It's a software product at the end of the day. You want your software to function properly. So even when you're developing a software, you have to test that software. Okay, so that's why testing is a very important part in this software industry, all right, in this IT industry. And Selenium is one of the most important tools and the most widely used tools for testing. That's one thing. And another reason why we test software is because a lot of users, when I say users, I'm referring to your clients or your customers. Now, those people, they may be using different browsers, they may be using different operating systems, and even different devices for testing. Now, if you want to make sure that your software works perfectly across all of these devices or operating systems, then you have to make sure that you've tested your software well, right? It should work properly all the time. I mean, if there are any bugs, maybe sometimes the software might work well in Google Chrome, but it might not work in Internet Explorer, or it may become very slow in Explorer. So these are the kind of things that you need to avoid. So this is another reason why you have to test software. And a lot of people are not aware of the fact that testing has a lot to do with handling the website traffic. Rather than saying software applications, let's say web applications at least, right? Software which is delivered as a service on the web. Especially for those applications, you got to make sure that they can be accessible on the internet at any time, and especially during times when there's a spike in traffic. Because what happens is when there's a sudden spike in your web traffic, supposing you have let's say 100 users on an average at any point of time on your website, and suddenly the website traffic, it spikes, right? It becomes 2000 or 3000 or 4000. Then at that time your server might not be able to handle that bandwidth. It will not have the bandwidth to service all the requests coming in from all your clients or people who are on your website. So at that time you have to make sure that there's a framework in place to handle that, and you cannot just directly deploy any new framework, right? So to make sure that the new emergency framework that you deploy in place, you have to make sure that also works. So you have to test that also, right? So you have to be prepared for everything. So testing has a lot to do with even preparation. And one important part which a lot of testers will agree with me is that the earlier you detect the software, the lesser you will have to pay to fix that cost. Because think of it like this: it takes time to build a software, correct? And it takes manpower, human resource. Now, if you build something wrong, or if you build a buggy software or a feature, then if you've spent 2 weeks, then it's a waste of those 2 weeks of time and pay for those 2 weeks, right? So the earlier you detect any faults via testing, the better, correct? So rather than getting the input or the feedback from your end users, or them complaining that this is not what I wanted, you have given me something wrong, instead of that, you itself do it on your end. then it's well and good, right? You will save these two important things of time and money. And connecting this point, the next point says aligning with customer requirements. So like I said, testing also helps you rethink what your customer needs are. So when you test it, you are basically putting yourself in your customer's shoes, on your client's shoes, and you're trying all the different possible situations or scenarios that can take place. And when you do that, you're making sure that there is no bug. So even when they accidentally try something which might not work, then you can basically realize that, and you can figure that out while testing itself. And that way you can eliminate that problem once and for all. And most of all, because of testing, you will definitely have a lower maintenance cost, and you will get better or more accurate results, right? So let's say these are some of the 6 most important points why anybody need to do software testing. All right. Okay, so now that I've spoken about what is the need for software testing, now let's see what are the different ways to test any software. Okay, so traditionally there are 2 types. One is manual testing and the second is automation testing. Now this manual testing is the kind of testing which is done basically by humans. Okay, as the name suggests, it is we that will script, and we will be executing all those different test cases one after the other manually, and we will have to basically check all the transactions. Are they valid? Are they not valid? We have to ensure that everything in the system is perfectly running all right, and that your software cannot produce any faulty feature, right? Now, because of this problem, your work gets tedious and tiring, because a man has to do it all on his own, right? So, I mean, how many times will a man do it, and for how long will he do it? These are 2 important things which make life boring, and they make it unlikable. So this is a very unlikable job. I mean, it's not that there are no people who are doing manual testing. At one point of time, that was the way to go, and it was a need, right? But in today's world, we don't need to do manual testing, because it's also error prone. Since it's humans doing it, it's possible that every human will do errors sometime here or there. And what if he fails to verify some transaction? I mean, what if he fails to do something which he was supposed to do because maybe it was tedious or tiring? So you have all these problems associated with manual testing. And then we have automation testing, which is what is moving in the market in today's world. And automation testing is done by various tools. Okay, and Selenium is one of the most popular tools, and that's what we are going to talk about in detail today. Okay, and we say that automation testing is a little fun and it's a little more comforting, because it's basically one time which you need to code. Okay, once you've coded, then you don't have any other worries. You can automate the execution of various test cases, because your entire code, be it 100 lines or be it a million lines, it will be broken into multiple test cases with a small part of code for each and every feature. Now, these features, you don't need to test it manually, you don't need to execute it manually, you do not need to verify the pass or fail criteria manually. Okay, with automation testing, you have the comfort of running them all one after the other, and once they're all done, you will also get the report manually sent to you. Okay, it will tell you whether your test case is passed or whether your test case is failed, or it will tell you if any of your features is working or not. If you have let's say 100 test cases which has between them, if there are a million lines of code which have features, then your test report will also say which particular test case failed, indicating which feature has a bug. Correct? So you will have this kind of a relation. With manual testing, you just don't get that. So you'll have to verify the pass or fail criteria manually, and check the reports, generate the reports, and do all these things. With automation testing, you have it at your fingertips. And you can also say that since it's done by machines, it's very less number of errors which you will encounter. Manual testing is error prone because it's done by humans, and we have to agree that humans tend to make mistakes. But with automation testing, that's a nada. All right. So that's the different software testing types. Now, let me go to the next slide, and now I'll tell you what are the different applications which need to be tested. Okay, so that's why this topic is called software test application types. Now, this is a very important slide for you people, because a lot of you will have this doubt. In fact, Akash has already raised a question, and he's said, can Selenium be used for testing anything? Well, the thing is, everyone here, and Akash, especially you, Selenium is used for testing only web applications. Okay, now that I've told you that Selenium is used for testing only web applications, you might ask, then what is the difference between the three, right? See, first of all, there are 3 types. there is something called as desktop applications, we have something called as web applications, and finally we have mobile applications. Now Selenium is used for only web applications. For software applications which is on the desktop, let's say Microsoft Word, a Notepad, all those VLC media player. Now all these are applications which are local to your system. Okay, they do not need an internet connection to be up and running. So these softwares cannot be tested by your Selenium. Okay, Selenium can neither test any mobile applications, be it Android or iPhone or anything. Selenium can only test your web applications. Now, when I say web applications, it's basically any software that is hosted on the internet. Or in other words, to make it even more clearer, anything on the internet can be tested. Any web page, any website, or anything, right? So YouTube is a software as a service that can be tested using Selenium. Gmail is a software as a service. Facebook, all these are basically software as a service which is delivered on the cloud. So these can be tested with the help of Selenium. And the tool that we use is Selenium WebDriver. Okay, because even in Selenium there are a couple of tools. There is IDE, there is WebDriver, there is RC, and there is Grid. Okay, we will be using Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so now that you guys have got a good understanding of the different software testing types, let's move ahead and go into more details about Selenium. Okay, so Selenium as an automation testing tool. What is it? It's basically an open source tool which automates web browser testing. Okay, now the very important point a lot of you people should definitely remember is it is open source. Okay, especially for those people who are new to Selenium and who are pondering whether to take up a career in this domain. Okay, when I say open source, it means that you don't need a license to work with Selenium. Okay, as a free user you can do it. As an end user you can use Selenium, and even as a company you can implement Selenium. But whereas most of the other tools in the market today which are relevant and popular, these tools cannot be used without a license. Okay, especially those like QTP, RFT, because QTP is by HP, IBM's RFT, Test Complete, RunnerX, all these are proprietary versions, and they're all paid. But Selenium is free and open source, and in spite of being free, it's one of the best. I mean, to work with, it's one of the easiest. You just need to have programming skills, but otherwise it's pretty easy, and this is what the world is in need of today, because it's all about cost cutting, right? The cheaper you can get things done, the better. And as organizations, especially in today's world, there are a lot of startups, small to medium sized companies prefer to use Selenium instead of paying lakhs and millions every month for a particular software, correct? So that's why Selenium is something that you should really think of. And the other benefits with Selenium is that the different programming languages it supports, the web browsers that you can do testing on with the help of Selenium, and the different operating systems which can be used to execute Selenium tests. These are the big advantages, because a lot of the other tools in the market they do not support all the programming languages, especially QTP, RFT. They work only with VB script and C#. Okay, but Selenium comes out of the box, and these Selenium scripts can be written in any of the languages that you see here. It can be written on Java, it can be written on Python, Perl, PHP, Ruby, and C#, right? So this is a very big advantage, and this is the most, I would say, this is probably the biggest reason why Selenium is the most used testing tool, because developers from any of who have skills in any of these programming languages can come over and start using Selenium. And that's how people have learned, right? People are taught these languages, and then since they are skilled, they can easily switch to a career in Selenium. But with other tools, you got to have specifically skills in those programming languages, and that's why Selenium naturally has a greater movement. And speaking of the web browser support, Selenium supports cross-browser testing. And cross-browser testing is really important because today there are many web browsers. So a Windows user may be using Google Chrome, or he may be using Internet Explorer. A Linux user may be using Mozilla Firefox, and maybe a Mac user would be using Apple's Safari, correct? Since there are so many web browsers out there, it's important that your software which is hosted on the internet, whatever your website is, whatever your web page is, all these applications and these web pages should be accessible by anyone, any customer of yours, using any of these web browsers. Okay, and I as an end user can use any of these, right? So I have to make sure that the software that is developed, so as a tester, you have to ensure that the software that you're developing works well on all these browsers, correct? So since Selenium does it for you and lets you test the applications on all of these browsers, it has again a huge popularity and it's the most preferred for any company. And then speaking of the different operating systems which can be used, they are Windows, there is Linux, and there is Mac, right? They pretty much dominate the market. And since Selenium tests can be executed on all of these browsers, there is no problem at all in adoption per se. Okay, a lot of people can just start learning, and there is no dependencies that you got to work only on Linux or you got to work only on Mac, because a lot of technologies and tools have that problem, right? That problem is not there here. So if you're still wondering, will it be easy for me to switch to Selenium testing domain? Then stop hesitating. These are some of the benefits, and these are also reasons why you need not worry anymore. Can you or can you not? You can definitely do it, and we at Edureka can show you the path. All right. And as instructors, we can help you teach, help you learn, and easily grow. So that is about Selenium's automation testing tool. Okay, that was the introduction. Now coming to this slide, I want to talk about the integration that Selenium has with other tools. Now I'm speaking about these tools because a lot of these tools are used for software development. I mean, there's nobody in the world that can tell me that they are not using even one of these. One reason is these are at the core center of the DevOps technologies, right? GitHub and Git, Jenkins, Maven, Docker. These four tools, they are at the center of software development. If they are especially being used, especially if the software is being developed the DevOps way. Well, even if it's being developed the agile way, or even if it's being developed via the SDLC way, even then you have to use some of these technologies. You have to use Git, at least for storing your code. You got to use Maven to build them, or Jenkins for deploying your code, and Docker for, of course, containerization. So I don't want to get into the details of these DevOps tools or how these tools play a separate role. Okay, but the point you have to remember is Selenium can be easily integrated with all of these four tools, and testing with Selenium is really easy compared to testing with any other tools. And even if you see in DevOps, the reason Selenium is probably the most important tool for testing is because of its integration and its compatibility with all these open source tools. Okay, the same cannot be said for other tools, because first of all, the other tools don't test web browsers. A few of the tools do, not all. Okay, and even the ones that do, they do not have easy integration with all of these tools. So that's about this slide, guys. Any doubts? All right, no doubts. I'll move forward. Okay, so guys, now we are on this slide, and over here, let me talk about the different tools that are there in Selenium itself. Okay, and I'll tell you the feature-wise comparison over here. In Selenium, we have Selenium WebDriver, we have Selenium RC, and we have Selenium IDE. Okay, besides this, we have another tool called Selenium GRID. Now, these are called the suite of tools in Selenium. Now, the differences between the three are that Selenium WebDriver and Selenium RC are used to build your test cases or scripts with a programming interface. Okay, you can design your logic, you can build your logic by coding using one of the programming languages. Okay, Selenium IDE, that is not possible because this is a recording tool and a playback tool. So whatever actions you perform on your web browser, if you're navigating to google.com and if you're typing something in the search bar, all those actions will be recorded and those actions can be played back using Selenium IDE. Okay, this is not a scripting tool. These two are used for scripting. Okay, so that's why you can also see the same difference over here. Test case creation, you use the programming languages to create the test case. Here you're simply recording it and playing it back. And speaking of the browser support that these three have, Selenium WebDriver supports any of these browsers, right? It supports Google Chrome, it supports Mozilla Firefox, it supports Safari and Internet Explorer. And Selenium RC, it also supports a lot of these browsers, but you have to note that in today's market, Selenium RC is deprecated. Okay, it's outdated and it's not in use. So Selenium RC was probably the first version of Selenium. It is actually the first version of Selenium, and the Selenium project kickstarted from here. Okay, but over time, there were a lot of problems with Selenium RC, and there were a lot of drawbacks, and because of that, it has basically evolved into WebDriver. So they merged RC with WebDriver, which in turn led to there being a product called Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so even though RC used to support all the browsers, there were other problems with Selenium RC. Now, those differences and those problems are not possible for me to explain right now. And if you have doubts, you can get in touch with me, or you can get in touch with Edureka in one of our future webinars. We can discuss the very same. And Selenium IDE, like I said before, which is a test and playback tool, this cannot be again used with all the web browsers. It can be used only with Firefox because it is a Firefox plugin. So when you're using Mozilla Firefox, you download this plugin or extension, and then you click on that button to start recording your actions and then play it back. There again, IDE is not very popular, and it's not a tool that I basically prefer, because there are a lot of drawbacks. You cannot create your test script in a very flexible way. Okay, when you scroll down, it is very tough for IDE to capture it. When you do a right click, it is not very easy to capture it using IDE, and a lot of those problems, right? A lot of related problems are there. And if you guys have any doubts between these things, if you still have confusion, I would say you can go back to Edureka's YouTube channel and you can check out some of our videos over there, right? So they have a detailed explanation. So there's an entire video on Selenium IDE. There's an entire video on Selenium WebDriver teaching you various things. Okay, go through these and you will learn a lot. Okay, and speaking of performance, we are speaking of the speed. Okay, WebDriver is really fast. It's actually the fastest, but compared to RC, RC was very slow. The very reason that RC was slow is what led to something called WebDriver being developed. And eventually, WebDriver, when it was developed, it got merged with Selenium, and then it became Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so RC was slow, and IDE is also pretty fast. So the moment you do any actions, immediately it gets recorded, and immediately you can play it back. But the test scripts don't always work. That's the drawback, which I also told you earlier. So that is the feature-wise comparison between these three products of Selenium. Okay, now the fourth product is Selenium GRID. Okay, now this one I did not explain along with the previous three tools, because GRID is not a testing tool, but GRID is something that is used for testing. Now what I mean by that is, if you have your script ready, especially your WebDriver script, then to execute that script on multiple machines at the same time, then you can use Selenium GRID. All right, so GRID will help you, in fact, execute multiple test scripts at the same time on multiple machines, having multiple operating systems, and it can also be developed on multiple programming languages. So you have all this flexibility. And Selenium GRID is very popular in the industry because it can be used to test these web applications which are there using the web server. Okay, now what I mean is that if you have a web application, and if you want to test that web application, and if it takes like 2 hours or 3 hours, then parallelly, if you want to do it on multiple machines and multiple programming languages, then it can be done. Okay, you can test all of that simultaneously on AWS instances, on AWS servers or other servers on multiple machines at the same time. You can do that. That's possible. The thing is, if you're using an AWS server or some cloud server, then you will have to probably use something called as HTML unit driver or headless browser. But if you're doing it on an actual machine, a laptop or a desktop, then of course you can go ahead with any of the Chrome drivers for testing on Chrome, or Gecko driver for testing on Mozilla Firefox. Okay, yeah, so on a high level, that's what you got to know. WebDriver, RC, and IDE are those which are going to build the scripts, and GRID can be used to execute those scripts on multiple machines running on various browsers and operating systems at the same time. Okay, and the way it works is there's a hub and node architecture where one will be the master and the others will be the slaves, and the others will be controlled by the master. And these details we will cover in detail in our next session. Okay, so if you guys have any doubts, please put that forward, because I have one last topic, and here I'm going to tell you by how much Selenium is growing every year. So if you look at this graph, which is taken from a very popular job portal, that is IT Jobs Watch, you can see that the number of job postings for Selenium testers or professionals, it's been ever growing, right? Look at the graph since 2008. It has been growing humongously, and this is where it has reached now. in 10 years time, in almost 9 years, it has reached here. Okay, so these are not absolute numbers, this is the percentage of growth. And my advice to you would be a part of this bandwagon. All right, there are a lot of openings which are there for Selenium. A lot of companies want people who are skilled in Selenium, okay, but they're not able to find many. So if you remember, this is the job vacancy, right? So these are the number of jobs that are vacant. These number of jobs are being vacant consistently, and it's growing continuously over the last decade. So if you think that if you want an exciting job in the IT industry, then yes, you can do this. It's all for you. You have so many postings, so don't worry about the competition. With competition also comes quality, right? So that is there, and even the pay is not something you should worry about, because testers get paid pretty well, and that's what you get to see here, right? So you can refer to this video anytime in the future. You can look at these graphs, and I would say all the best. Think of what I've just told you, and take up what you think is right. Okay, if you think Selenium is right for you, do it. I think on that note, I can conclude today's session, guys. And if you people have any questions, please put them in the chat box and I will answer them right now. Okay, so since there are no questions, I can conclude today's session. Okay, Akash, Mohit, see you guys. All right, see you guys in the next session.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!